Hey guys, what's up? You know I encourage real activism of any kind, and you know I just encourage real interest and real concern of any kind linked to veganism, ecology, and hey, a bunch of other issues too. Recently, actually, I was talking to Amy on the phone, and one of the things I said to her toward the end of the conversation, I think she kind of didn't get it, but I said, look, like I want to stay in touch with you because of this activism we've been talking about. But I still want to stay in touch with you, even if you're not getting any activism done. Like I know she aspires to do a bunch of things as an activist for veganism. That's what we were talking about for a large part of the conversation. But I said, look, like I want you to know, I'm not going to cut you off and think you're a scumbag if you don't follow through with some of this stuff. Real people have jobs, have kids, or even if you don't have kids, suddenly you have to take care of your own parents. Your parents or your grandparents get sick, something happens with your career. There are many, many legitimate reasons why people can't be hands-on, real-world activists in the political process in the country where they're living. And I really do sympathize. And for large parts of my life, that's been true of myself also, where I've had really no ability to be an activist in any sense. But if you can't be a real activist, you can still care. You can still be interested. You can still be concerned. And of course, one of the bizarre things about veganism on YouTube, digital veganism, internet veganism these days, is the lack of concern, the lack of interest, even from people where I wouldn't have any unrealistically high expectations of them as activists. For some reason, it's strange. People always expect university students to be very politically active. It is not easy at all to be a real activist, to be involved in political processes while you're a university student. Much easier to do when you're retired or, above 50 years old or something. Anyway, there is a post here on Patreon. Post meaning a piece of text from a guy named Patrick Thomas who is living in Adelaide, Australia. And this post from Patrick Thomas is making a call to try to get in touch with other people who either would be real activists or, as I say, would have a real interest or concern. And I think this is worth reading out. It has some just interesting reflections on the contrast between hype and reality, given all of the apparent vegan activism, seeming vegan activism in Adelaide. However, I want to note that if you're making comments on Patreon that other people are going to see, the best way to do it is to comment below the videos or below the podcasts, below what I've posted. Those comments do get seen by other people, and they do get seen by me. All right, so I'm now going to read what Thomas has to say. Sorry, his first name is Patrick. His last name is Thomas. I'd like to take this opportunity to have a chat about Adelaide, Australia, where Freely and Durian Rider, among others, are from. I've lived here my whole life, and there seems to be little to no effect made by them in this community. So while they may be turning individuals vegan, on a community and local political level, there seems to be no effect. So I've spent some time thinking about what changes I can make in my community and where I can begin. For the purpose of this exercise, I had a look at Pork Australia's 2014-2015 annual report to try to see where Australia stands with its consumption of pork. Australian consumption of pork is trending upwards, around half a kilo annually, more than last year. There is labeling distinguishing Australian-made and imported pork, and this will help boost Australian pork consumption over imports. Businesses are now capturing methane and using it to generate electricity, generating over $2 million in carbon credits. So I just mentioned this is methane from the poo of the pigs. To use a very sophisticated word, they collect the excreted matter from the pigs and use that to generate methane. They have developed, so the meat industry has developed education resource kits targeted at children in primary and secondary school to educate students about where their food comes from, in quotation marks. This has been carried out in over 200 schools. So in other words, this is pro-meat industry propaganda in the school system. They've made an agreement with the federal government to streamline access to 457 visa employees for producers, foreign skilled labor, receiving government grants of $5 million for their research and development efforts. So, something I've learned from this channel is that we don't need only vegans to make our desired change. It includes vegetarians, anyone that is against factory farming. It includes those with specific political views, etc. For example, I'm sure Australians would be inclined to retract the streamlining process for the 457 visa in order to make sure Australians keep their jobs and that those jobs are available to Australians. Getting people out to school to show the students the kid-friendly truth about pork and animals in general. So he's suggesting here that, there should be a vegan message or some kind of skeptical, scientific, humanitarian message about what the reality is of meat production in contrast to meat industry propaganda. Organized with the federal government to reduce or change the agreement regarding the $5 million in funding they gave to the pork industry. E.g., the money must be used to boost free-range farming practices. The money will be less valuable. I'm not actually entirely sure what he's suggesting there, but it doesn't matter. He's making a suggestion that the $5 million could be used better, and it's hard to disagree with on that general level. Anyway, as you know, many vegans oppose free-range legislation, but anyway, life is full of contradictions. Like some of you, I have had zero experience in any political movements, and I am sorely in need of advice. So my questions to you would be, what can I, and maybe a few others, do at a local level in regard to the above? Should I be focusing on smaller problems? How do I utilize petitions effectively? What kind of problems can be addressed with petitions? Funding. What can we do with hundreds? What about thousands? Are we only going to see significant change when we have millions? P.S. If you live in Adelaide, let me know. Cheers. So he's obviously hoping to get in touch with people who have experience with activism and organization in Australia, ideally in Adelaide itself. Now, again, okay, I'm going to make a very general statement here. Who can you learn from? You can learn from successful political organizations and advocates and the people who have done the organizing with completely unrelated issues. So, I mean, lately I've used examples like seatbelts, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, gay rights activism. You could probably learn a lot by getting in touch with people who have experience with, organizing charities and advocacy groups for gay rights activism with specific legal changes. You can learn a lot, in short, by talking to people who are not vegan and who have no interest in veganism, but who have had some success of that kind. At the local level, you might be surprised if you look into the various churches, some of the religious groups, they may be very successful in organizing these types of, how shall I say, these types of lobbying efforts.